Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. It was an exciting weekend in the world of motorsport. Red Bull sealed the Constructors Championship in Japan. No surprises there. MotoGP, the championship, comes alive as Bagnaia crashes out in India. There's a bit of an issue with some visas there as well. World Superbikes. Where was that? Aragón, I think.
Yeah, Aragón, Spain. Yeah.
Full track Aragón. NASCAR. Tiff's not going to be very happy, but wait and see what happened in Texas in NASCAR. And back home, there was plenty of drama at Silverstone, only on the national circuit, but loads of drama, BTCC, and lots more back in the UK. But we're going to start off with some news. What have you got for us this week, Tiff?
And it was mainly sort of announcements coming out, all referencing AlphaTauri, who are now supposed to be known as, for next season, what I've heard, Hugo Boss Bulls Racing.
What a
Hugo
name.
Boss. Anyway, I mean, I don't mind them. They can change the name to whatever they want. But the driver choice, I think lots of hearts sank when we all loved Daniel Ricciardo. But he's had his major innings. And the fact that Liam Lawson has been such a stunning rival and done so well. So there he is, Suzuka's the track where he's racing for this Super Formula Championship. I think he's 1 point behind, there's one round to go. So he's big in Japan, big name, and so is Yuki, obviously. And just before he goes out to qualify, they say, you haven't got to drive next year, mate. I mean, he must have felt so depressed in his little hotel room because they've gone for Ricciardo to share with Yuki. And just nobody on the internet or Twitter can believe it. And lots of journalists are writing, why? There's a talk that maybe Liam's going to be loaned to Williams to give him a year's experience. I don't know whether that's true, because obviously Sargent's having a miserable time.
He clearly doesn't need.
I know. But what he needs is circuit knowledge, So a season, he needs a year of, circuit knowledge. And then maybe at the end of next year, if he did a whole season with Yuki, then look at who's going to take Sergio's place,
This whole thing, it really frustrates me. The FIA they've rejected 3 teams, haven't they? This week?
Yeah, for the new teams. Well, maybe they financially. I mean, but the requirements to jump the hoop, the hurdle that the rich 10 teams. I mean, they're just demanding more and more from anyone trying to get into their little clique.
But the whole thing restricts people like Liam Lawson, and I just don't get it. Yeah. I don't get the Daniel Ricciardo thing.
No, well, he's a great name. He's huge publicity, but he's been huge publicity as the reserve driver. Does he need to race? So he does all the PR videos, doesn't he? He's driven a Formula One car around Australian outback, and he's doing the PR for them. He's part of the family anyway. So
no,
give
right.
youth a chance.
It's the same last week with Bottas. It's an even worse decision. It is an even worse decision than
and Zhao. Bottas and Zhao are neither.
Well, Zhao, I get it.
They dropped Pourchaire, didn't they? Pourchaire was their reserve driver. He's won the Formula 2 Championship, done everything you need to do, and they put him on the bloody simulator for a year.
What I get Zhao, because he brings an audience that from a country that you wouldn't have, but Bottas he's been there and done it as well. He's not ever going to set the world on fire. What he doesn't. Give somebody a chance. Give one of these youngsters a chance, please. It's crying out for it. Anyway, it was. I mean, speaking of youngsters having a chance, and you say circuit knowledge. Imagine that. Imagine Liam Lawson never even raced a Formula 1 car at Suzuka, and stuck it on the front row of the grid in qualifying, which was, I have to say, one of the most exciting parts of the weekend.
You've got the names there. Oscar. You've got
Oscar,
names.
Sorry, not Liam Lawson. Sorry,
yeah,
Oscar.
just proving that young drivers, because all these teams have, we need experience. It's just rubbish. This we need experience to get Constructors points. When, as we said, Liam Lawson and Oscar Piastri never races. I mean, just immense. Poor old Lando must be wondering, whoa, this is all getting a bit pressurised.
Lando's still got the edge.
Lando's probably thinking, I better get a contract at Ferrari or Red Bull quick to get away, otherwise I'm going to get blown away by this blooming youngster next year.
I don't think he'd be blown away. I think Lando's an exceptional talent. I think they're so evenly matched, but they're a strong lineup.
But while Max went back to being Max and disappeared into the distance, it was a bit stroppy, wasn't it? You got to eat your eggs because we all said it was due to the regulation changes, which I didn't say. I actually agreed it wasn't due to the regulation changes last week. But of course, lots of the keyboard warriors have been saying that. So Max was a bit grumpy, so disappeared. So all the action behind was typical Suzuka. You can't really overtake unless you've got a massive tyre difference or tyre difference plus DRS, to be honest. You almost need both of them. But it was entertaining because I think of all the inter-team scraps, because Lando eventually ended up, he went behind Oscar at the beginning, obviously, because Oscar had a good start. But then he was on the radio, wasn't he? Are we racing others? Who are we racing? And all these drivers, when they catch their teammate up, they sort of try to say it around, instead of saying, just let me past, they sort of give team reasons why we should change our tactics because I'm a bit quicker. And of course, talking to Liam Lawson, we had this amazing, the first lap of the race, the Alpha Tauris was side by side, I think, because Liam he was 11th and Yuki was 9th, I think, 9th or 10th and 11th, weren't they, on the grid? Because Liam didn't quite make the top 10. Actually, Liam had been about 4th quickest in Q2, but he used an extra set of red tyres to get there, so he didn't have the extra set of reds in quali. But yeah, they had a hell of a battle. The whole race, the two Alpha Tauris were at it. And of course, Liam Lawson, who's not getting the drive, was the one that got home first, beating Yuki by 1 place. So that was quite entertaining. Mercedes were entertaining from start to beginning because they were banging wheels.
There's no love lost there now, is there? There's something going on.
Lewis was saying, what's going on? I need to get by. And then George was like being a team manager and strategist all in one towards the end, wasn't he? Now, we've got a plan here. I'll give him DRS, so that'll keep him ahead of Carlos, like Carlos did with me. And all this is going on in his head whilst driving one of the busiest racetracks with knackered tyres that he had on. It's amazing the capacity they have to think and talk and chat and work all these things out.
Yeah, but you say that, Tiff, it's second nature for you as well. You think when you're driving a car, you're presenting, you're going sideways, you're laughing.
Yeah, but I used to drop 2/10 a lap or something on the radio. So obviously Mercedes were very entertaining.
Did you really drop 2/10 if you're trying to listen?
I got to press buttons and to do all those things.
And I have to say, you're right with the youngsters of these days, with the computing knowledge that their brains have in terms of just the steering wheel and just everything happening so instantly. But that's being brought up on gaming. There's no question.
And Ferrari, no drama. Hold on. I suddenly realised at the end of the race, all the radio connections, Mercedes going on with those two and everybody else on radios. The Ferraris just sort of had a fairly normal, no drama race. I don't know quite how Sainz ended up behind Lewis in the end, but he did. But so that was quite interesting. So they seem to be getting their act together at Ferrari. Okay, they weren't the quickest cars this weekend, but at least the strategy seems to be calmed down a bit, which is encouraging for Ferrari. But we forgot about Checo. We nearly forgot about Checo.
Well, he was only forget about him. He's forgettably bad. He is unbelievable. He's another person that should be dropped.
0.773 slower than Max. 0.773 slower than Max. He then crashed into Lewis on the run down the first corner.
Hang on. People that didn't watch the race. I'm sorry, Tiff. People that didn't watch the race might get a bit confused. 0.773 slower than Max. That he was 0.773 slower than Max in the whole race. He was 0.773 slower than Max in the qualifying lap.
That's what I just said.
Unbelievable. No, you weren't listening.
You weren't listening to me.
Lap? Oh, all right.
I said qualified 5th.
Yeah.
0.7. You don't listen to me. Are you sure those cans work? You don't listen to some music in there, are you? So then he banged into Lewis. He was actually squeezed by Carlos, to be fair.
Yep,
to be fair, he was slightly squeezed, but he clattered Max. I mean, clattered. Clattered Lewis. Clattered Lewis. So that broke his wing. Then trying to come back, he made that ridiculous overtaking manoeuvre and took out K-Mag, which was similar to the one that he did on Albon in Singapore. Just a late, impossible lunge, which actually ruined Albon's chances of them needing points in the Constructors, which are so valuable to stay ahead of Alfa Romeo. And then to add insult to injury, they sat him in the pits, didn't they, for about half an hour before they got permission from the stewards that if he went into the pit lane to take his 5-second penalty for smashing K-Mag off the road, then he wouldn't have to serve it in Qatar. So that was the insult to injury. Talking about that opening, that run, they're getting more and more dangerous, these Grand Prix boys, not only in qualifying where we still had that slightly queuing up going on. It didn't cause too much drama this time. But, that run down to turn 1, there's too much moving and weaving going on.
Max does that every single Grand Prix without fail.
They got no peripheral vision anymore. In the old days, you can see if you had one car on your left or two cars on your left. And Ocon, which didn't seem to get mentioned by the commentators and didn't get a penalty for us, I saw, he was on his own in the middle of the road with nothing on his right at all. And he just decided he'd go a bit left to squeeze Valtteri, not knowing that Albon was outside of Valtteri. So he clobbered Valtteri, and then Valtteri clobbered Albon, and all three of them's races were pretty much compromised. But they've got to be told to go in straight lines a bit more. I don't know about weaving on a straight. On the first few hundred yards, unless you're absolutely clear, they almost need spotters like NASCAR and IndyCar, going down turn one to say, you're three wide, don't move over anymore, because they just got no peripheral vision. There's all these flipping safety devices. So that started a miserable weekend for Williams. I always support Williams, and Albon. The car wasn't that quick this weekend. Albon then ended up retiring. Logan Sargent. I mean, I feel so sorry for them.
I do as well. I feel dreadfully sorry for him because we're massive advocates of getting the young rookies in. Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't an outstanding, Formula 3. I mean, he was up there. He wasn't obviously one of the standouts. He was very, very good, and I'm all for a very, very good driver to get his chance for 1 year or two and then drop him. And maybe that's what will happen. But apparently in Suzuka, he was almost on Albon's pace, and then he just lit up the rears. It was quite a. He tried to hang on to it. He tried to stay in the throttle and almost was drifting it out of that long, to finish the lap, to get a lap time in the barriers and then in the race. I think he clattered into, so he locked up and hit someone in the race and dropped back more.
But again, I get it. But don't forget, this is an entertainment show now. It's gone are the days of Formula One just being about pure racing. So they want an American driver. They want a Chinese driver. They want a Japanese driver. So
I know.
The more they can make it about entertainment globally, the better.
There's no doubt it does help if you're the only nationality going for a seat when there's, 3 British drivers already there. So I understand that. It's marketing. That's how the world works. But Fernando was back moaning again, wasn't he? Because Fernando, being Fernando, has to be in the limelight. So he loved it this year when he was finally back in the limelight by finishing on the podium. But now he's back battling for 9th and 10th places. He was he'd been thrown. Was it thrown to the lions? Wasn't it?
Yeah, mate. I love
he doesn't like it.
I love how they put the English sort of mate at the end of it.
And Lance Stroll, anonymous, didn't even get a Q1, didn't feature. I mean, that's another one that's got to go somewhere, surely.
Yeah. No, he's not going to go anywhere because his father owns the team.
Well, but Dad must be pressurised. Someone, shareholders. Now shareholders. What for Daddy? Daddy keep bringing me.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of entertainment. I know it was a bit of a boring race when you look at it overall, but there was enough entertainment. It was a Grand Prix. Grand Prix aren't like.
Well, take Max out of it, and it was super entertaining.
Well, yeah.
It would have been an amazing 1-2 for McLaren. There was the Gasly Ocon switch late on. Gasly wasn't very happy with that. Racing with George and Lewis, and I'm telling you, there's something brewing there. There's something not quite right there because they did not even acknowledge each other in Parc Fermé when
after the race. No, they're not in love with each other, are they?
And we have to say, a huge congratulations. As much as it frustrates me about Max and how a lot of the Red Bull people come across, huge congratulations to Red Bull because not only have they got the best car by far, they're the best team. They do the fastest,
and they've got the constructors' title.
They are the Tiff. They tick every single box. There's strategies, the pit stops, the car, everything. So good for them. So big.
Well, they won the constructors. They wrapped up the constructors' title. Yeah, so
absolutely.
Max should wrap up the drive. I think in the sprint race at Qatar, he can win it then if he wins that. So Red Bull all the way. And meanwhile, in MotoGP, the championship is far from over. In fact, it's getting more and more exciting. They went to this Buddha track. I mentioned last week, I thought it was the Formula One circuit. It was the Formula One circuit, which is actually one of Tilke's better efforts. Not that I've ever praised Tilke very often. It's actually a reasonably exciting circuit, except for the first corner, which Tilke always seems to want a chicane or a tight corner, which always causes crash. And actually, the start line to the first corner was very short, so the pack arrives still accelerating, and we'll come to the problems it caused later. So a good track apart from having turn one being too tight.
What's the dream turn one for you then on any track?
Just a medium speed, one corner, never an S. So you can stay on the outside and go all the way around side by side. Before, because if you go the other way, then obviously the bloke that was on the inside is now going to chop to the left. So you can't have an S bends as the first corner. It wants to be medium speed, sweep deeper, wide, let everybody go side by side, and then work it out the next straight.
So if you go from the old circuit at Silverstone, Copse is a good first corner.
Yeah, Copse was a great first corner. Yeah. It's a bit narrower now because they pinched it turning in to provide that huge runoff area. It used to be a very deep, late apex corner, which was brilliant. Now it's that early turn in, causes controversy. We won't mention that.
We'll come on to that at BTCC.
But MotoGP, it was a really interesting weekend. And I have to compliment the commentators who are brilliant, who get excited but don't shout and scream. And they got Neil Hodgson that gives this wonderful insight. And I was thinking about that. The BTCC boys are really good commentators. The GT commentators are really good. And it seems to be only in the Formula 1, 2, 3 where shouting seems to be obligatory. You know, everybody.
It's entertainment. It's different.
Yes, but no, the BTCC, they're entertained. The excitement comes. It's the way your voice modulates. You don't have to suddenly go from no volume to off like they do.
It's a different format. People watch BTCC because they love motor racing. They don't necessarily watch Formula 1 because they love motor racing. We do because we love motor racing. It's all about the entertainment.
Anyway, getting back to MotoGP. It was a fascinating Grand Prix because out of a sudden, the Hondas were competitive-ish, and so was the Yamaha, because I was talking before about how, you got Marc Marquez 15th and Quartararo 16th, world champions, and how the arms race, the advanced bike technology has made Ducati and Aprilia and KTM out in front. But Neil was explaining how, because I was thinking, hold on a minute, because the Honda boys qualified 5th and 6th. Johan Mir Marquez was 5th and 6th, and Quartararo was 8th, I think, on the Yamaha. And they were in touch with the Ducatis. And the good thing was that going to Buddh Circuit, no bikes had raced there. So suddenly you're a track where none of the manufacturers have a huge technical backup of knowledge. And he points out that all the other races now, every year, there are 8 Ducatis. They all go home, download the data, send it back to Ducati head office. They got 8 bikes to find out which bike was quickest through which corner and adapt everything. But of course, Yamaha and Honda just got 2 each, so you don't get that feedback for all the other regular circuits they go to. So here they were at a fresh track, and all of a sudden, the other bikes were in contact with the front. So it was a really good race, really good stuff. The sprint race, of course, they had, where the first corner caused its first broken collarbone in this instance. Marco Bezzecchi was on pole in the VRS6 satellite Ducati. It was still an old Ducati 1, 2, 3. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, in fact, in sprint race. But who was it that clobbered? Luca Marini clobbered the back of pole sitter Bezzecchi. Teammates. It was a bit Bezzecchi's fault. He made a bad start from pole. He tried to edge in, and I think Marini thought he was going to have room, and then he ended up on his front wheel and crashing into the back of his teammate. Bezzecchi recovered. Really got a collarbone, so he was out for the weekend. But a sprint race, it was won by Luca. No, not by Luca. Where's my sprint race result? It was all the Championship 3, because it's Bezzecchi. What's his names? There was Jorge Martin, of course, and Bagnaia. They're the boys that are up there. Martin won the sprint race from Bagnaia, and Marc Marquez was 3rd, got a podium for his Honda. Then the race itself, Bezzecchi checked out, got a whole shot from pole, went away and won it. Bagnaia then, who thought his Ducati didn't handle as well as the satellite boys, battled to get by Jorge Martin, the championship rival, the closest to him, and he dropped it turning in. I mean, it's amazing how these champions. And Bagnaia has a bit of a past record of doing that, though. He did that at the beginning of last season and had to catch up.
But it is incredible how often it happens.
So down he went. So then we had Jorge Martin back into 2nd, and he's 2nd in the championship points. So he's now gained a lot of points, as did Bezzecchi out front. But he was just getting more and more exhausted. At one stage, his zip came down as well. I don't think he'd done it on purpose, because the heat and humidity, they shortened the race by 3 laps, didn't they? Because the riders said, this is just crazy. He managed to zip his zip back up again, doing 150 miles an hour on a motorbike. But he was gradually being caught by Quartararo. And then literally 2 laps at the end, he just sort of completely seemed to outbreak himself, ran right off wide. Quartararo got back past him, and then Jorge did an amazing, dangerous down the outside pass that he got away with and came 2nd, held on to the 2nd place. And then back at the finish line, Parc Fermé, where they all stopped, I mean, he just collapsed. The doctor was there, and drips were needed, and water, and it's nowadays sports, whether it's tennis or they seem to heat, whether it's heat more than it was in the past. I think they're going to places around the world now where they never used to race, and the heat's killing them. So, but it was a fascinating race because as I said, Paul Marquez dropped it as well, trying to catch up. So he didn't make it to the podium this time, but Brad Binder was fourth of the KTM. Had a great battle with Johan Mir in the Honda. So lots of manufacturers, a good solid race.
They had some fun getting in. Apparently, there was a confusion with 500 visas or so, and a few people couldn't even get into India. So, which all makes it very interesting. Good.
How can they make a mistake like that? But no, it's good. We complain about MotoGP being a bit dull, but then you see when they get back now to a track where Ducati have all the knowledge, we'll find the Hondas and the Yamahas probably back on the grid again.
Whereas Moto2, go on Moto2. Oh yeah, sorry.
The silly corner struck again in Moto2. Jake Dixon was on pole. He's third in the championship. Jake, ever smiling Brit, heart on his sleeve, made a great start in the first run, but behind him going into turn one, about 4 bikes went down, all piled up on top of each other. So he had to have a restart. And the restart, he also made a good start. But then this, I can't use a word to describe Alonso Lopez, because I don't know myself, but has a great reputation for being a bit loose and doesn't believe he's ever in the wrong.
What word are you going to use? What don't you want to use? Tell me in confidence.
I don't know, lunatic or something. I don't know what you use nowadays. Can you be a lunatic? I don't know. So Lopez made this ridiculous late lunge. So he pushed Jake out of the dirt, pushed himself out of the dirt. So I think Jake dropped to about 8th instead of leading turn one. And he's beginning to catch up. He got by Lopez, and Lopez then just dive bombed him and just took him out the next corner, put Jake on the floor. So Lopez torpedoed Jake twice. And I don't know. I think they need more race bans in cars, bikes, everything. I think these 5-second penalties sometimes, you've got to have. They have these red cards or point system in Formula One. Don't they? It seems to take a long time. You get to the end of the season, you're saying Gasly's on 10 points, then you can't remember why he got each point.
Yeah.
There needs to be some sort of you're out for the next race. That's it. No, out. So Lopez ruined Jake's day. So that allowed Pedro Acosta to cruise off into the win, and yet another win. And he's now miles ahead of the championship. Second in the championship, but Italy's Tony Arbolino came second in the race. So those two are a bit stretched out. Dixon's still third in the championship. But there was a brilliant battle for third place to liven it up with Joe Roberts from the USA just pipping Sergio Garcia. Not obviously the golfing Sergio Garcia, another one, to third. Moto3, though, was a cracky race. Moto3, as always, although Juan Masia, the Spanish boy, cruised to a win right out front, the battle behind him was amazing. Masia's joined the championship. The championship was so close. There's 3 riders now separated by 1 point with about 4 rounds to go. There's a fantastic battle for second. The 2 Japanese boys, Toba and Sasaki. Sasaki, who's I think he's third in the championship. He's one of the 3. They were dueling. The Dutch boy we mentioned before, this new sensation they've got, he had third, and then he had third, and he didn't. Then he had second, and he was there, and then he clashed with his teammate Sasaki halfway around the last lap. He was stuck on the gravel. Colin Veer. So great battle for second place. So that's really tightening up. I guess Scott Ogden, I don't know what's happening, what the future of Vision Track Racing is going to be. It's fantastic, effort to get British riders into Moto3 because we haven't got any. We didn't have any. But Scott, he qualified 4th in the rain. He does these in the rain. He's a top 4, top 3 rider, which means to me he's got an incredibly delicate touch, and yet he can't seem to transform that to the dry. And whether it's just these other kids are too aggressive and he's not aggressive. It's obviously aggressive in the wet would see you probably on your arse sliding down the road. Mm-hmm. So, but how he can't transform it, he made a good start this time. Sometimes he loses it. He got into the treacherous turn 1 on all right in 4th spot. He was 8th by the end of the lap. Almost every corner that came up, someone dive bombed him. I was watching in the back of the shot. And he eventually got pumped down to 13th. So he ended up in this battle for 13th in a sort of 3rd group. But he was fighting well then when he sort of settled into the race.
Maybe the bike set up a little bit differently. Maybe it
I don't know who knows. But then he had a high side, an awful high side. He lost it. High side. He took one of the Japanese boys down with him, I think it was. So he crashed out.
It's incredible how they go into these corners and they're braking and the bike's moving and squirming. It's incredible.
But a good word, Josh Watley, the other Motorvision boy. He had his best race, the other Vision track protege. He was very young. He was one of the youngsters with least experience. He had a 16th place, so that's his best result. So hopefully Vision track will be back next year. How we make beef Scott up for the dry, I don't know. But the talent is there. He's got the silky skills in the wet that he can't seem to transform to the dry, but I don't know anything about that. So please, bike people, tell us what's going on. Still on the bikes, we go back to Spain, the Aragón track, where Razgatlioglu is still trying to catch Bautista for the title this year. Bautista helped Razgat. He crashed out the first race, and the gap was down to just 20 points. But then Bautista came back to win the next two.
He's class, isn't he? Well, they're both class, but he's just got that edge. He's got an edge in different ways. He's quite an edgy sort of character as well. When he gets back and they tried to interview him, and they sort of turned away and wouldn't.
Did he?
Yeah, but
Bautista,
incredible racing.
So he's now got a 47-point lead with 2 rounds to go, but Razgatlioglu won't give up. Each weekend, you can collect 62-point maximum. So there's still a lot of points to play for.
Well, I watched quite a bit of it actually. I watched the sprint race was just amazing. So him, Jonathan Rea, and Bagnaia, they had a breakaway. The three of them.
Bautista, don't get them confused. I was
Bautista, Alvaro. And they had a breakaway, and Jonathan Rea, bless him, he was in the front. You thought he's going to hold off because he had an edge, and then Bautista and Razgatlioglu were fighting themselves. So every time Jonathan Rea and his bike was just that little bit faster on the straights as well. But then Bautista just masterclass with 1 lap to go.
Did he?
Bang bang.
Oh, did he? I didn't. That's
It was amazing racing. You can't believe
it is good stuff. I know bikes are entertaining.
How they push these bikes, how they just wrestle them around the circuit. It's quite a good circuit to watch, actually. It's good circuit for bikes.
Yeah, lots of twists and turns and that huge long straight.
Where the Ducati's just.
Oh no, it's frustrating. You're not on a Ducati. That was some bikes.
What happened to your mate over in?
We go to America on a round the world trip. From Japan to Europe to America. We end up, of course, at NASCAR with the playoffs, where it's all getting exciting. It was the first of the 3 races that will cut them from 12 to 8. So we're trying to get into the last 8 now. And Kyle Larson, the greatest, smoothest, the fastest driver in NASCAR, had it in the bag. There was quite a few dramas, a few crashes. Kyle, the other Kyle crashed, Kyle thingy. Bush, he had a crash and put himself virtually at the bottom of the 12, so he's unlikely to get through. So Larson's out there leading, and as happens so often, with 25 laps to go, the yellow came out, so they're all back in. He stayed out, didn't get new tyres, and the top 10, in fact, didn't get new tyres. But all of a sudden, out the restart, he's got Bubba Wallace next to him. No, but it's the golfer, isn't it? I'm getting golf mixed up. This week, it was a lot of golf. I mean, gosh, that golf, the ladies' golf was amazing entertainment.
Yeah.
Oh,
we stayed there, the Finca Courtesan. Do you see that?
Yeah, I know. We stayed there for BMW, didn't we?
Yeah.
So Bubba Wallace then he was on pole. So his car was really hooked up for the Texas track. And then about 2 laps side by side with Kyle trying to clear him on the bottom line and Wallace just on his door, pinching him down all the way around. And just going into turn 1, the back went to when even the great Kyle Larson, the greatest NASCAR driver in the world, couldn't hold on to it. Round he went, slammed into the wall, put him right at the back of the field. Obviously, he hobbled round to be classified, because every place you classify is another point in this race to stay in the top 8. In the end, in fact, Wallace didn't win because William Byron came through on the restart after Larson's crash. Larson's teammate, William Byron, who's top of the points, actually, has taken a win. So that puts him straight through into the 8. So now there's only 2 slots left. And they go to Talladega. Talladega is just a lottery. Whether you survive Talladega or not.
Why?
Is just down
Why?
Well, because they all just sit in that 200-mile-an-hour queue, pushing, shoving, weaving. And if someone up front loses control, it usually wipes out about 20 cars. So Larson is now 8th in the points. And Bubba's actually Wallace, who was 12th, he finished third, he's come up to 9th. So it's this cut-off line. So that's just 4 positions between them. So if at Talladega, Wallace finishes 4 places higher than Larson, they'll swap places and Larson will be in the cut-off. So either you've got to win, but if someone wins Talladega, then there's only 1 place left in the final race, which is the Charlotte Roval, as they call it, the road course within Charlotte Speedway. So Larson is 8th on the cut line. And if he doesn't make it through, that's it. You can't win the championship. Only 4 of the 12 drivers, only the 4 of the 12 could get into the final race. And then just one of those 4 is the champion. So Larson's in a perilous position. If he crashes at Talladega, he could still win the Roval and get through just in the last round.
So what was that Denny Hamlin said? He said, I know damn well I'm better than a lot of the champions we've had in our sport. So is that the fact that he's saying that?
Never won it.
He's never won it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, right. Okay. I know damn well.
He's in the middle of the point. He's in about 5th place. He's all right in the points. But the points could just change. If he gets knocked out at Talladega, then he'll be at the bottom of the cutoff. So it's very tense going into one of the tensest lottery of races. There's more unknown rookies have won the Daytona 500 and the Talladega 500 than any other race, because a rookie who just hangs in there around a not overly skillful circuit. It's a strategy skill circuit, but obviously actual driving. Anyone can win at Talladega, baby. Even what's his name in the film. So
Will Ferrell.
Big tension building in NASCAR world.
Shake and bake.
But the drama at BTCC, unfortunately, the championship probably has gone away to the one man, Mr. Sutton, after a dramatic weekend.
You say unfortunately, it normally goes to the last race, which is going to go to the last.
Yeah, but he's got to have a real catastrophe to not win it now.
He has been outstanding.
Yeah, he should win it. They should. Yeah. He's the most deserving driver. He should win it. But I think a lot of people were hoping Jake Hill, who hasn't won it yet, might win it. And
he's unlucky as well. I
know the second race, this misfire, but as you say, it was on the awful national. It was entertaining because it was on the awful national circuit at Silverstone, when track limit. And Ricky Collard, who always says what he thinks, was on Twitter. I saw just that. Saying, one corner you can go a bit of green but no sausage curbs. The next corner you can do the sausage curb but not the green bit, and then you can. And then when we watch the television, you see Cops Corner, and they're just mild. They're just crazy. Off into the car park. And the commentators seem to be, let's not mention the obvious track limits being abused for lap after lap. Neither drop them, as they do in a DTM now. Apparently the race at Red Bull Ring last weekend was ridiculous. Everyone's just going everywhere. NASCAR do that when they go to road courses. So either drop track limits or flipping impose them, or put tyre stacks up to really upset the BTCC boys. But it was a weird weekend, because all of a sudden the Vauxhall Astras were quick.
Well, hang on.
Now there's this sort of
there was rain and there was no rain and it was going to be dry and then there's wet, so it's all a bit
but
up in the air.
Qualifying was dry.
Yeah,
and this Mickey Doble put his Astra on pole position, shocked everyone. And there's always rumours in BTCC because they put BTCC engines in their Astras. There's always little rumours. Occasionally, one team is given a little tiny tweak here and there. So whether we're ever all thinking, but anyway, I mustn't deny Mickey Doble an amazing pole position. But then, poor man, there'd been lots of talk because of the weather. As we said, it was been to drizzle. There was talk they might get 2 parade laps, 2 green flag laps, and apparently the decision was made to be only 1. And Mickey or Mikey, I'm not sure how he pronounces the Mikey. Came round as a pole sitter and went and did a second lap. But apparently the decision had been made that there was only 1 lap. So everyone behind him stopped on the grid and he had to start instead of the front.
Oh, no.
Right. I know. I felt so
I didn't even see that. Oh, no.
So then the drizzle was getting worse. And only
Jake Hill. They got comms as well.
I know. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Poor man. So Jake Hill was the only one of the front runners to go to wets, which just gave him a race win, just cruised away. Whereas Ash Sutton and Tom Ingram, the main championship rivals, they both went to the slicks. They all looked at each other. I think
Tom went first, and Ash.
Did Ash? Yeah. Is that what? I wondered who cracked first.
Yeah.
And so they both had to pit in the middle of the race in the end. Well, that was a bad decision as well, because some of the guy who stayed out on slicks finished 9th, I think, or 10th. I forget who it was now.
Yeah, but we've all got PhD in hindsight, Tiff. It's all well and good to say it's a bad decision now.
But Ash stayed out on slicks in Scotland, didn't he, for about 10 laps, slithering around like a lunatic. But so they ended up 22nd and 23rd, having pitted mid. They could have finished ninth.
Which made it quite exciting, as Jake Hill, of course, won the race, closed the gap a little bit.
Yeah, but also Jake was now, because they're way back on the grid, Jake now, race 2, was going to cruise to another win.
23rd place for Ash.
They'd finished 15th or 16th if they were lucky. And Jake would have been right on top of them on the points. But instead, it all went tits up. Oh, can I say that? It all went upside down. Sorry, that's probably another word I can't use anymore.
Tits as well.
I don't know. We can't. I don't know. Another thing I can't say. I'm going to have to list
blue
things
tits,
I can't
blue
say.
Tits in the garden.
Yes. So, because Jake had his misfire cruising away, and the misfire hit it. All of a sudden, he's slowing.
Well,
meanwhile, behind
but what happened was he was in front, he had a gap, and then there was a safety car, if you remember, which I'm sure must have...
didn't help.
No, it must have.
So, well, the misfire set in, did that set in after the restart?
It came in after the restart, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, he just dropped back and back and back with his misfire getting worse and worse. Meanwhile, Mr. Sutton and Ingram were just carving through the field. I mean, it was just incredible because, Ash went on to win. I felt so sorry for Aaron Taylor-Smith in one of the other quick Astras, who was making good use of his car. And, he's a really talented driver, Aaron. I know him quite well, really talented. And so many are. But if you're not right in the car, same as Formula One, if you haven't got the right car or team. But he was one lap away from winning when Ash sneaked past him to take the win, and Tom got up to third. Actually, if Jake hadn't had the misfire, can you imagine how pissed he would have been if he'd won a second race? They looked in his mirror and Ash Sutton behind me.
And Tom Ingram just behind him as well.
I think he would have gained huge amounts of points in race 2. There's a lot of controversy on Twitter now. We're getting real good conspiracy theories now, as the number 12 was picked again. Someone on Twitter has been watching the hands going in, and 12.
It's not a conspiracy. Please.
It has come out. It's come out about 5 times this year, I think, 4 or 5, which meant that Ash was 12th on the grid and Tom Ingram 11th. And again, through they came. Colin Turkington had a win. Because he'd had trouble in race 2, got clattered into and started from the back, so he had a win. And Ingram and Sutton were 2nd and 3rd from 11th and 12th. And it all goes on to Brands.
45 points in front, something like that. I remember.
It's a lot of points, but you never know. I remember Turkington. He won it in the end, and he got clobbered in race 1. The trouble is, if you get clobbered in race 1 at Brands and you finish 24th. You don't often get much more than 15th in race 2, then you're not even in the reverse grid. So, if Ash did get clobbered off in race 1, that's the killer. That really ruins your whole weekend. So,
well, even though it was the national circuit at Silverstone, so about 58-second laps, it's still a lot easier to overtake there than it is around Brands.
But it's the amount of pushing, banging. It was like a stock car race, and that
no, it wasn't that bad. It was.
Tom Ingram used it a lot. They don't stop you hooking your wheels inside the left field curb, up on the dirt. So people, even though the car in front was on the blocking the corner, they were just going inside and then pushing the people out. I mean,
it's left field the same as Brooklands. Is that what you mean?
No, the long double right before the start-finish starts. Brooklands is the left.
Yeah. And then it
goes into left field.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So outside the BRSCC, whatever it is. What is it? BRDS. What is it?
BRD, the British Racing Drivers Club, of which you have to achieve certain international success to become invited to be a member.
Do you think I'll ever be invited to join?
No, Caterhams don't count, all right?
Maybe I'll do it.
And there were Caterhams. Hold on a minute, I've forgotten. There was Caterhams at Silverstone. Which class was that? Was that your mates or what?
Well, I'm not just about Caterhams, but we'll come on to that at the end. We've got a big announcement to make at the end in terms of racing. I might leave it to next week, actually, because there's no Formula One. Ooh. It's so big, I'm going to leave it to next week. So yes, there were Caterhams there. It was the 420s. So they're only about 2 seconds slower around.
Is that the second class in the? Was it 5 different Caterhams?
The fastest.
The fast. I thought it was one lot with little screens and punch.
No, you've got Academy, then you've got the Road Sport. They've both got windscreens. Then you lose the windscreens, you go to 270, and then you go to 310, and then the 420s are the fast.
Little sequential gearbox.
The sequential gearbox, yeah. And like I said, they do just under a minute laps.
They got red flagged in the end in the race on telly. From
poor old Carl Jones, bless him. Everyone was worried about him, saying, "Oh, he must have broke a leg or an arm or something." It was a shunt, but it was quite innocuous. And someone sent me a text. I asked how he was. They said, "Oh yeah, his burger was a bit big for lunch. He couldn't get out of the car very easy, so they cut the roll bar off to get him out."
No, yeah. Did they cut the bar off?
Yeah, they cut the whole roll bar off to get him out. But he clearly was winded. And you know what it's like when you're winded? You just never speak. You never feel like you're going to get it back, and you're going to do it. But it was brilliant racing again.
Yeah,
always good.
Yeah.
It was a weekend for Aaron Head. There was one win for Gordon Sawyer, but Aaron Head, he came third in the first race, and he won the next two. But they were compromised, sadly, with red flag, as you said. And Charlie Lower, who was doing the 270s, came runner up in the 270s. He had a brilliant race. It didn't look like it on paper, but he had a brilliant race. He was right in the mix. Did very, very well. So well done to Charlie. Had a bit of argy-bargy.
Bound around the circuit. I've told you, it's a stock car track. And
the only other Caterham news is Louise Deason, who I raced with for 2 seasons, very fast. She's just been accepted to the F1 Academy, the ladies' academy. So
she's racing next year.
Yeah, apparently. So
is it just a sport?
My reliable source, Freddie Chinnix, tells me that. So I should, as a world-leading journalist, I should check my sources, but I'll take Fred's word for it. So yeah, that's exciting for Louise, doing some
good. So entertaining BTCC. We've been worried about that. It's been a bit boring for a while, but it's always when weather gets in, a bit of tricky weather.
What do you expect in October? Well, September, October in
I know.
Bring on to brands. And what's coming on next week, Tiff?
Well, next week there's quite a bit around the world, not mainstream in the Formula One single-seater world or IndyCar or anything, but World Rally Championship goes to Chile, where I expect Rovanpera will be getting even closer to another world title. The MotoGP boys go off to Japan to the Motegi Circuit, so that'll all be exciting stuff. And World Superbikes, a lot of bikes going on to the end of the day. They moved from Spain to Portugal, from where they were last weekend, to the Algarve, where, as Geddes said, Bautista might be able to clinch the title, but Razgatlioglu will be chasing. NASCAR, as we said, Talladega, you've got to watch that, baby. Talladega. I think it starts about 6 p.m, so it's an early evening, nice little time to watch some danger. And then back home, we've got the British Superbikes having their penultimate round at Donington, where the battle between the two beer Ducatis, the monster beers, goes on and on. The battle there, half a point between their two riders. So they've got 2 rounds to go. And
we've got a big announcement. What I'm going to be racing in October.
I thought this was next week.
I'm going to announce it next week. Yeah, going to announce it next week. In October, a big, huge race, and I'm super excited. And I'll just give you one little tip, one little sneak preview. Race Logic. Okay, so I'm not going to say any more than that until next week. But it's big. What's that club called that I could get invited to after this?
British Racing Drivers Club.
I'm on it. I'm sure they're listening. See you next week. Thanks, George.
Cheers all.
Cheers.